You were looking at, of course, a broader index and some stocks there. As for me, I'm going to give you guys at least a preview of this particular indicator, at least released, reflecting that there is a somewhat tighter spending, at least for Filipinos, household spending for the year 2018. You know, Filipinos may have tightened their belts a bit more, especially due to that elevated inflation experienced last year. Now, if you try to take a look at the figures, you would see there's also a markup really in household spending in 2018. That's a total of 6.31 trillion pesos. That's still a 5.6% year-on-year increase. However, that is still slower than the growth posted in 2017, wherein we had a markup of 5.9%. Also, if you try to take a look at it in a per capita or per person basis, you would see here growth was actually at 3.9%. There's still an expansion, albeit still lower at 4.2% than the previous markup that we had. Now, you also, if you try to take a look at things on a regional basis, you would see here that Central Luzon actually registered the fastest growth in per capita household spending at 5.3%. That's over 69,000 pesos. Still slower though than the 6% growth in 2017. Likewise, in NCR, uptick was at 3.2%. That's over 109,000 pesos. However, that's still lower than the 3.5% registered in 2017. Now, looking at it by region, you would see here there's a slowdown in various regions here like Calabarzon, Mimaropa, Western and Eastern Visayas, as well as Northern Mindanao, Davao, and Sorsogon. However, an acceleration posted at least in Cagayan Valley, Bicol, Ilocos, Visayas, Zamboanga, Car, and Caraga. So pretty much a mixed picture here. However, there is one region that posted a decline, and that of course is ARMM, or the Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao. Now, you have your analysts saying that the spending slowdown really is due to elevated inflation in 2018, like what we mentioned earlier. You have Robert Dan Rosas of Security Bank saying that household final consumption spending may actually have slowed down to 5.6%, but still a decent number considering the difficulty that we had to go through in 2018. He is, however, acknowledging that high inflation eroded that improved household income driven by increase in remittances as well as higher take-home pay due to trade and the stable employment prospects. So all in all, he's saying inflation decreased the purchasing powers of households. Now, he's saying receding inflation, at least this year, will actually help support household spending. At the same time, you also have to take a look at the policy rate cuts by the BSP, which in turn will actually enable private firms to sustain jobs and income creation. And then on the other hand, you have Carlo Asuncion pretty much saying the same thing. He's actually, in fact, zeroed in on Central Luzon. He's saying that this is pretty much expected, at least the higher acceleration in the area. He's saying that aggressive infrastructure spending and the consequential impact of such development really is boosting growth in the region. On ARMM, he is saying that it's pretty much expected since the region is still challenged and that primarily is an offshoot of the armed conflict in the area.
Okay, so interesting there, we are growing but not at the same pace as we were last year. Now, one important point also is that despite this growth, NEDA is saying our inequality is actually on the uptrend. What's going on there?
Basically, what NEDA is saying here is that richer areas are getting richer. Okay, so that despite, of course, the overall economic growth. As I say, you have NEDA saying that the regional disparity in wealth has widened, mitigated only by high overall economic growth and the trend towards reduced poverty. Now, they are saying that high income classes still concentrated in high income regions like NCR and Central Luzon. Now, they in fact cited some data from the the Philippine Statistics Authority, saying that the slowest growth rate in terms of average per capita gross regional domestic product were actually registered in two of the poorest regions. We have Eastern Visayas and ARMM. You would see here, at least from 2012 to 2018, growth was, at least for Eastern Visayas, at 0.8%. And for ARMM, it's at 0.5%. Per capita GRDP also for Eastern Visayas is at 38,598. Still quite high. Compare that, however, to ARMM at 14,657 pesos. In fact, we have a soundbite here from Adoracion Navarro. She is an OIC, or at least an undersecretary here at NEDA, pertaining to at least this widening wealth gap, at least in the country.
Story is the sustained growth in the regions, and the second on the primary story, a very important topic that we should focus on is the widening regional disparities in the regions. It's a challenge that confronts us, and we should put more focus on. The government has to double its efforts in pushing for policies that can reduce such disparities. For example, we need to improve connectivity across regions and enhance the efficiency of transport, communications, and overall logistics networks.
What Adorshan also here is saying, or Navarro is adding to, is that growing inequality is pretty much apparent as well in countries with high economic growth like the Philippines.
Okay.
And she's saying that the government really is trying to address this disparity via cash transfers and tax reforms. But she's adding that this is not enough. Primarily, we have to focus, in fact, on agriculture, especially in regions like the Caraga. And at the same time, focus on the ICT. And they are also, in fact, pushing for the 18th Congress to at least pass its tax reforms to at least address wealth disparities.
That's a good point, Jess. A lot of things going on underneath that figure.
Exactly.